All right, we're now recording. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the 28th Paparelli Zoom chat for entrepreneurs. Thanks for coming. We are all about entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs. Last week, we discussed the challenges of counterculture selling with an entrepreneur called Dr. Brian Hill of Hip Nation. Hip Nation created a healthcare product that actually reduces employers' cost for healthcare, their bill, by 30 to 60%, instead of the normal 20% increases we're seeing. And his, even with that, it's tough to make sales. And his big insight, I thought, was great, was Brian said, I came to realize that evangelizing is not sales. So qualify quickly and move on. You're not going to convince everybody, no matter how good the offering in counterculture selling. So there were a lot of other insights from that. And you could find that on the that conversation on my YouTube channel. So to subscribe, simply go to zoom.paparelli.com. And this gives you the ability then to kind of share these videos with some friends and colleagues, which would be helpful for all of us. Every week, great ideas and insights are shared on this Zoom chat. I learned so much from the people that I'm talking to, and that's why we come back here each week, because together we are in fact stronger as entrepreneurs. Use the Zoom chat to ask questions, the chat feature within Zoom to ask questions. John Marshall is monitoring the chat for us. And if a question that you ask is appropriate for the conversation at the time, he's going to kind of jump in and ask it. If not, we are going to hold the questions until till 9:45, when we'll get into the Q&A from 9:45 to 10, and you will be able to ask your own question to our guests. Today's topic is enterprise selling in a social distance world. This is something I wanted to cover for a long time, since we've been in this thing since the end of March. You know, the entrepreneur's thought of the day, straight from the Bible, is then King Agrippa said to Paul, do you think that in such a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian? That's from Acts 26:28. And the application I see there is selling the enterprise is selling high, and it ain't easy. It's not a one-call close. By the way, I do lead a Bible study at noon, from noon to 1 on Thursdays. If you're interested, just send a email to paparelli.com, charlie@paparelli.com, and I will put you on that invite list. But let's get started. Enterprise selling is critical to any early stage company if they want to achieve unicorn status. And SalesLoft is moving rapidly in that direction, particularly with this last raise. But in short, it really these enterprise sales are the big buck sales and the final gold plate that you have to put on your business as you're getting to that billion-dollar valuation. John Imlay, the former CEO of MSA, and who's very well known here in Atlanta. MSA was one of the very first software companies in the early 70s in the world, and it was located, as I said, in Atlanta. I give John the credit for he invented the software sales rep and the enterprise sale. He called these salespeople tigers. In fact, he wrote a book called Tigers. They were high achievers, smart, high energy, athletic, dressed right, and articulate. They had the ability to call high, build C-level relationship, and build a support team behind them that would eventually gather everybody together and kind of move them in the right direction at the prospect to get to a sale. These were the best of the best, top of the pyramid salespeople. And it was an in-person, on-site, generally big expense budget sale. That's what it was about. This was the enterprise software sale model for the last 50 years. And Imlay invented the profile. It was his contribution to our technology industry. But in 2020, enterprise selling changed. The prospects stopped allowing these highly energetic and capable salespeople to visit. So building a C relationship became even harder, as the C-level executives were sort of behind what I'd call the corporate firewall. But salespeople like Kevin Collon had to still hit quota. Kevin is the EVP of enterprise sales at SalesLoft. He closed deals with IBM, Google, and with LinkedIn. More importantly, he figured out how to continue to close enterprise sales, even in this social distance sales environment. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Kevin, if you don't mute yourself, I welcome you and appreciate you spending this hour with us and helping entrepreneurs all over the United States and the world.
Hi, Charlie. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure and an honor. And this is an exciting topic because we live it every day. Our company lives it every day. I'm sure most folks in selling in general and enterprise selling as well, right? And things have shifted dramatically. I know we've talked a lot about the new normal. I feel like with the way we're selling these days, that new normal has just become just totally normal. We're in acceptance phase, right? We're not in denial. We're not angry. We've accepted where we're at. And I would say the industry has shifted dramatically. And we could talk about that today, but some trends we're seeing.
Let's get started. Maybe we can get started by just asking you. So how did you, just to kind of, to give us a little bit background on you. I mean, I'm a University of Miami guy interviewing University of Florida guy here. So I'm hoping that we could put that aside and we could do well with this.
Okay? I won't hold that against you.
All right, that'll be great. All right, but where did you cut your teeth? Where did you learn the sort of the art of the deal early on?
Yeah, it was good. Back before, before there was training. It was just cutting your teeth on B2C and B2B selling. I've been selling since the early 90s when I was a rep selling, if you remember floppy disk, right? That's how you would come and show up at a customer. You bring your projector and a piece of your server and a floppy disk if you wanted to insert it there. And that was kind of the beginning for us for enterprise selling. And that grew when I was a rep through the 90s.
You say that was the beginning. Did you get right involved when you first started in enterprise selling, or were you more SMB type selling?
I was selling to B2C. I was selling software when I was 18 years old in college. My brother owns a software company.
Oh, okay.
To this day, yeah. So I was selling by phone and at industry conferences, selling B2B selling that ran small business, back office, front office, payroll. So, back when everybody, I would say, that got into enterprise selling, before enterprise selling, that were selling copiers or payroll, right? That was a lot of those folks that came up through selling that then got into enterprise selling. While they were doing that, I was selling B2C software for payroll and for small businesses back then.
Right. So then what, but, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but that I always followed, I read the book by, is his name Benioff, the salesforce.com? Is it Benioff? Is that his name?
Benioff, yeah, Benioff.
Okay, yeah. And he made the comment, I remember so clearly, he said that, when they started selling at the departmental level. So that was almost that B2B type sale. And it took them, I think, over 3 years to make that first enterprise deal. When did you first enter this sort of, so go from this B2B sale that you were talking about, when was the first time that you actually moved to enterprise? How long ago was that?
Oh gosh, probably I would say right around 96, 97. I was a rep and had a quota and was selling, and that was the beginning of before we had activist sales negotiation and the different kind of challenger sales were out there. We had Carnegie and read a book, and that was really kind of what we did. And I, as a early seller, believed that wrongly that selling was about the product and the features and the functions. And and I'm sure Benioff talked about that.
But that's natural coming from the world that you were in. That's what it was about. I mean, you're talking to the decision maker, and here it is, right? Just
that mistake is still being made today too, by the way. We're still. I talk about the 4 Ps of selling. We tend to think in selling, especially around technology in general, that we think it's about the product features and the pricing, and that's how you win. But it's really around the other 2 Ps, which are people and politics, right? And it's a relationship game.
Yeah, but how long did it take you to kind of learn that? I mean, when you got into your first enterprise deal, I mean, you must have got slapped down pretty hard if you kind of walking in with the first 2 Ps.
Yeah, I think, a part of it is also.
You remember who it was?
I do remember.
Were you with Rick Chitty at the time? Is that what it was?
Yeah, you got good memory. That's right.
Was it? What was the name of that company?
Yeah.
What was
So
the name of that company? What was Rick's company's name?
IQ Software, then Information Advantage,
There you
and then
go.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, then Sterling Software. I think there were 3 acquisitions 1 year. IQ Software was based out of Atlanta when I lived there, and
Yeah.
then Information Advantage out of Minneapolis. Eventually, Sterling Software gobbled them up, and then after I left CA, gobbled those guys.
Who was your, do you remember that first enterprise deal? So here you are, you don't have enterprise experience, and Rick Chitty tells you, man, you got to sell these big guys. Do you remember back who it was?
Yeah, it was at the time. Today it's FIS, Fidelity Information Systems, but
Okay.
I believe it was if I get it correct, it was the Alltel guys out of Jacksonville, but it's Fidelity National Information Systems.
So
Uh,
tell me how that deal went.
well, that was
You
back when
remember
we were,
back, this is like, I always think that, I always love it with golfers. We were just talking about the Masters here. With golfers, you could tell them, in 1960, in 19, no, like 1995, when you're on the 13th hole at the Masters, the guy's like, oh yeah, this is the club I used. I hit a slow draw to the left, all this guy, or to the, it's just crazy the things that they can remember. Do you remember this as a,
I remember actually bringing, we flew down to Jacksonville from Atlanta. I remember bringing our projector and doing it on overheads and our presentation over overheads on our first meeting. And IT was just, 4 or 5 guys typically in those groups, and you're selling BI software, business intelligence and reporting software, to a very competitive world.
yeah,
And I remember doing the deal, and I remember specifically getting the order signed by fax, which was fun. And so turning the old joke of turn on the fax machine to make sure that paper is true. So I do. It's funny you say that. You do remember certain deals, and I remember that one clearly.
well, what was different about that deal? You call it an enterprise deal. Why was that deal differently, the way that you had approached it, the way versus the deals that you did before, which were the sort of more SMB, B2B type deals?
Yeah, I mean, because in a deal like that, enterprise is really about affecting the global, the larger goals of the company instead of a departmental function, a feature function. So, and obviously it's typically Fortune 500 or Global 2000 companies. And so, and you're solving typically a problem that's, especially, I'm used to selling integration and BI and reporting, not necessarily revenue facing like I am today at SalesLoft. So back then it was a heavy IT technical sell. So you had to, sell to the CIO. Back then we didn't have CSOs. We didn't worry as much about security. I could sign my own contracts. I mean, the world's changed dramatically. It's changed dramatically. I don't even think we had much, involved with legal at the time. Most of the things, if they were odd, they would help us out and negotiate contracts. So that's a big part of security. Has driven a lot of what we're doing today and how we sell. That's it's been a challenge as well. So to your question on that, selling to a company like FNIS was really about, it was an enterprise reporting project so that all users that did reporting would have access. And that to me was, that's what enterprise selling, right? Is that it's a broader use case across the company.
Okay, so as somebody who's, I'm an entrepreneur and I have sales reps, okay, and in fact that are doing pretty well in this sort of B2B more, what is it that you would tell them? You say, as you start looking towards taking one of those reps and pushing them into an enterprise type sale, can that same rep do enterprise sales, or do you have to be kind of brought up into enterprise sales? It seems.
Typically not. I mean, that's always one of the biggest challenges is how do you get, we talk about hiring A players. Experience is a big part of it, and it's not always successful. It's chipping your teeth and learning through what you've done, in mistakes you've made. So it's really, and we find this right in our own company too, when you've got reps coming up through SMB or mid-market and they're selling to the enterprise type customers, is can they hold court with executives, right? And that's a big part of it. Not do they just know their product, but can they,
do they have executive presence almost, in fact?
right, presence, yeah, and understanding, and do they have compassion, and they sincere, or are they just asking the 5 questions they ask every executive, right? Because they felt like that work. Are they genuine, right? And do they care about where that executive is going and what they're, do they do research and all those types of things that are really important, right? And so enterprise selling to me is really about surrounding the customer, right? And building a wall around that account and realize the account, the customer, the relationships, all the things I talked about with the 4 Ps. those are really important things that there is no like single transactional way of selling to an enterprise, and every deal looks different. That's why they're really hard to forecast, right? Everyone's different. They affect many people. There's a lot of
Why is that?
politics
Why
involved.
is it that every deal looks different? It would seem that there would be a process that you're bringing them through, just like there's a sales process for everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you're selling sales engagement software, right? There's a process there. You know, if I say, so what's the process for enterprise sales? You're saying, well, it's different for everybody, really?
Yeah. So when we do mutual success plans with customers, not our own internal, but with customers,
Yeah.
we start with a blank piece of paper because not every deal looks the same. You think there's a selling motion, then a procurement, and then there's contracts, and then you go implement. But there's so many mini cycles involved there because people are involved. And a lot of folks are making decisions by committee, and it's not typically the CIO wants to do something or the CRO or the CEO. And so, especially now in these days, and I know that's the topic we're going to talk about, is there's a lot more committee decisions that almost have to be unanimous too. So those process across every deal, I said, not every two deals look alike.
Well, take me through that. Okay. So if I'm dealing with a committee, I've got to call into somebody, who am I calling in to start with?
So it depends, right?
Well,
What
for
your
you,
product
I
is.
mean, let's talk for you. Let's talk
Yeah.
about sales loft. So, who's your target, your initial target to get the conversation going, to
It's
start building
typically,
the committee?
yeah,
Okay.
typically revenue leaders.
Okay.
And we talk a lot in the enterprise about having executive alignment and how important that is. I like myself, I meet with some of the companies you mentioned, Google, LinkedIn, often, almost monthly or quarterly. And we have this relationship and we build it pre-sales and post-sales. However, that's the way we've sold nowadays, because there's so many more involved. I have to align different folks with different
Well, you're saying
different people at other companies.
before all this social distancing hit, there were fewer people involved.
Yeah, I would say
Tell
almost
me,
as a
why don't we look at that? Let's do a before and after kind of a thing. So
okay.
let's kind of establish the before, which is the way, you were selling, okay, to enterprise. So what was it like then? And then we'll kind of come back and we'll talk about what's it like now, so that we
Yeah,
get a baseline, if you will. That'd be helpful.
yeah, I like that. That actually is good since we're going into the comparison. So typically the before COVID and the many years I've been selling, there's you identify roles like champions and economic buyers,
Yeah.
right? And coaches. And there's usually two or three people there, right? And that's usually who you're selling to. And you go in either dual or single threaded to the one or two, right? You don't often get access. It depends on what your solution is. You don't always get access to that economic buyer, but you get decision makers. Now it's changed. Do you want me to tell you how it's
No,
shifted?
I want you to come. I want you to
Yeah.
take me back. We're going a little
Okay.
slower. You're going fast here. Okay. There's a lot of guys we need to bring along here. Okay. You talked about that there's three key people in every enterprise deal, which is different than a B2B deal. In a B2B deal, let's go back to an SMB B2B deal. How many people, you talked about an enterprise, there's champion, economic buyers, and coaches. Okay. How would you define the key personnel in a B2B deal to try to get just a simple SMB B2B deal?
Like a B2C or SMB, a smaller.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. So it's much more transactional, and usually the economic buyer and the decision maker are the same person.
They're the same, right? So
Yeah.
It simplifies the deal.
Yeah.
You're kind of moving along. So you don't really have other people involved. And if they are involved, they're not really part of the decision process. They're just more adding information, if you will. But now you're here with the enterprise, you're talking about these champion, economic buyer, and coaches. You call into whom? Which one of those three?
If it's myself, I'm usually having my rep align with the executive that is the economic buyer, which could be
okay.
a CRO, a CFO, or anybody at C-level, a CEO as well.
So the economic buyer is the catalyst to getting the deal going.
Correct. Pre-COVID.
Okay.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. So what is back then? So what did the economic buyer then do once you've kind of gotten them interested? Okay. What was their next step? Because now you're saying more people are under joining the team from their side.
Well, I used to say the silver bullet is FaceTime before COVID.
Oh,
So
okay, good.
if you can get FaceTime, if you can align me with an exec and we can go have a meeting in person,
Yeah.
it's a novel idea right now, but if you can go have a meeting in person, it's usually checkmate versus the competition, because you build that relationship, you've got a human being, and you've also got, I am somebody that is now representing the company to them and their success, right? So if they choose us, that relationship is really important, regardless of price or anything else.
So FaceTime, what'd you call it? FaceTime is what?
Yeah, FaceTime is the silver bullet. That was
Is
the
the
silver
silver
bullet.
bullet. Okay,
Yeah.
so FaceTime's the silver bullet. You
Yeah.
finally get into this executive who's the economic buyer and decision maker, really, right?
Yeah.
You know, and he says, "Man, I love you. You're great, Kevin. We're really connected here." What's that person's next step, you know, in the sales process? Back then, this is pre-COVID here. What's their next step? They don't just say, "Well, just give me your first two P's, give me the pitch, and man, we're off and running here," right?
Yeah, usually it's not that at that level, I should not be negotiating or doing any pitches. At that point, a lot of the groundwork has been done by my team, right? That groundwork's been done with some of the coaches and champions.
Okay.
You've done demos, you might have piloted or POC'd. I'd like to be introduced early on, but once we've gathered requirements around, pain and gain, right? So you've identified there's some kind of pain and gain, typically not a feature function.
So the people who are pitching, before you even show up, the company's being pitched by, let's say, Sales Loft or whoever your company is, and
Correct.
it's really either going to be to a coach or a champion, who's then going to help them identify who the executive is.
Yeah.
And that's when they call you in.
Ideally, but often we are not, as some of the sellers, part of, and this is enterprise selling, is we believe who we're talking to or is somebody else. Sometimes we believe that person is the coach or is the champion. And sometimes we even believe they're economic buyer because they believe they are sometimes, right? So,
right. Or they present themselves as being the economic buyer, right?
Yeah.
So we have a question. So typically, who do you start with? The economic buyer or the coach, or where's your first interaction?
Depends if it's inbound or if it's outbound. Inbound, they typically, and now these days have done the research, and it's usually somebody that's tasked with go out and identifying the problem. That's usually your coach, could be a champion, right? But if you can get a coach and a champion, it's the project owner. That's what my sellers do. And then we typically, their job is to do really good discovery, and not only discovery around pain, but the people. Who's involved? How do they make decisions? That work should be done before I'm introduced, because then I can come in there with power and knowledge when I'm talking and aligning to their executives.
Well, who's then on your team? You told me who's on the prospects buying team. Okay. Who's on your team?
The enterprise seller, and often the SE seller.
Are you the enterprise seller?
No, my reps.
Okay. So you have reps of the enterprise seller. You have reps that are selling into the enterprise. Okay, great. Right. Okay, so the enterprise seller. Who else?
Yeah. So our structure, I've got leaders, vice presidents of different regions and different verticals, and then under them they have teams of reps, and supporting those reps are sales engineers, and those reps are also teamed with inside sellers that are calling outbound or following up on inbound leads, so that they're setting meetings.
Okay. So did you close some Sales Loft deals with enterprises prior to COVID?
Did you mean as a pure rep? Myself?
No. I'm talking to you as a rep. Okay. I realize you're the EVP. Okay. And you got this whole structure under you, but did your reps, I guess they were closing these deals, and you're brought in from time to time, depending upon the size of the deal. They want to bring in not only the regional guy, but they want to bring in the EVP, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so what changed? So March 17th hits, or whatever the date was, right? And the silver bullet is now out of the chamber, which is face-to-face selling, right?
Yeah.
So
I remember.
Tell me what happened. What were you thinking right then, being responsible for these enterprise sales? Okay.
Personally thinking this can't be happening. This isn't really happening. So kind of ignored it for a day. And I remember it was announced that Sunday that they're going to start shutting down. And I had a meeting that Monday with an executive in Florida. Luckily, I was driving, not flying. And I remember going to attempt to meet with them and waiting in the lobby, and him talking to security about whether he was allowed to meet with me. And I had to wait for an hour before we figured it out. And we did meet, but that was that first Monday, and probably one of the, you know, the
Was that
last.
meeting different too? Did all of a sudden, was there a tension in the air?
Yeah, there was. But what happened instantly with anything, right? Because I went through this with the 9/11 and with, you know, the market in 08 and 09, is that, you know, the focus became on, you know, just, I'm not spending any money. This is on pause. And that was our meeting. We were going to buy this a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Now we're on pause, and let's see where things go.
So everybody was, because they didn't know what they were doing, is everybody's frozen in place. So the budgets just got closed down in effect.
Yeah,
Or the
correct.
spending, the budgets were there. The spending was gone,
Spending and what are we doing and the planning, and nobody realized that, you know, you might start shutting down real estate, and this whole work from home wasn't like, we were going to just do this for, you know, what was it, 3 or 4 weeks, right? And then go back. And that's what my belief was at the time too, and didn't know where we'd be sitting 8 months later.
when did your view change? Okay. As to, I mean, now you're reporting, here you are in executive meetings and you're reporting, right? This is to your private equity companies and everything else. They want to know, well, what's going to be happening here? And what were you telling them, you know, in this initial interim period, which is, I think it was projected to be a 2 to 3 month period, because that was the PPP loans and all that other stuff coming
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, I remember an actual conversation we had with our leaders about, you know, we got to be prepared that this could last through into June, into July. I remember that conversation about, we may not go to our offices, our headquarters, anywhere else till July. So start planning for, this was after we were getting through a couple weeks in. So the thought that this was going to go past the summer and that kids would be home from doing homeschooling, all the things they were doing over the fall, we didn't even think that was going to happen at the time, to be honest. But what we wanted to do,
you were projecting 0 sales.
No, we weren't. Not in the business we were in, because of we help our customers sell digitally and engage with the customers. So our business was stalled for a little bit. It was a blip, but it was about 2 months of a blip, and then it took off.
So you were in the midst of 2 months in a blip.
Yeah.
Is forever when you're the EVP of sales. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
and we didn't talk. I mean, we shifted from, you know, let's do our planning for next year and what are we going to look at hiring, to let's stop, let's freeze hiring. What are we doing this quarter? We didn't even know what next quarter looked like at that point. We only knew what this quarter looked like.
Well, what changed? So you guys had relationships with executives, like you did the one in Florida that you talked to, that said, look, we love you. We were going to buy this thing, or we're in the sales process, but no, we're not spending. 2 months later, you said the blip was over. What happened?
So it was right around, and I remember specifically around June, where the switch happened to, we still have to be in business, our customers.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do? And going back, I draw back back to 08 and 09, where the spending and the focus started to be around the customer, their customer. How are they going to get close to the customer? So the budgets everything seemed to be frozen, especially around IT, unless it was security. And then on the business side, it had to be about revenue, marketing, getting closer to the customer. How do we serve our customers? Because customers were adjusting their business models, right? If you think all the companies that, you know, do delivery and pickup and everything that was related to that, and the Ubers of the world had shifted to their business models overnight, right? To keep it was, you know, keeping folks employed, but there was spending that was needed around the customer and marketing. And that's where I saw right around the June, July timeframe, where we started seeing a huge amount of inbound. Folks were more receptive. And by June, our customers, and let me know if I'm fast forwarding too much on this, but by that time, our customers had adjusted to working from home. And that was a big part of it as well, too. The unknown was more known.
What happened, though, is there's 2 things that happened. Is you did say that the silver bullet is really all around face-to-face relationships, right? So you had established some face-to-face relationships prior to the lockdown, if you will, or for this I'll call it social distancing. Okay. I could see, how did you, and then you have post-COVID, post-lockdown, if you will, meaning that I need to build new relationships. So tell me a little bit about the relationships that you had and how you progressed those deals. And then tell me what I want to cover next then is how you built new relationships. Like, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
aren't meeting with your reps. Okay. So what are you doing? So let's start with the original relationship that you had that hadn't closed.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
the Florida guy. Okay.
It wasn't for us in my experience, and I saw this with colleagues as well too. It wasn't a no. It was, we're on pause. What are we going to do next? And then June started the conversations,
Yeah.
and a little more spending. What I didn't realize was happening at the time is, I go back to that, the silver bullet being FaceTime, and I have a slide that I do with my reps when we do deal reviews, and one of them actually talks about FaceTime, and we color code everything, red, green, and yellow. And we always, like, what are our gaps? Oh, FaceTime, we need to go see them and all that. And now we literally change that FaceTime slide to some meaning now that I'll get to in a moment. But we wanted to shift to what we didn't know what our sales process looked like now. We were just kind of being very reactive to, hey, somebody over here is interested. Now somebody over here. We didn't know how to adjust like we are today. But through that, we learned.
Funny. So you became opportunistic is what you're saying.
Totally. Yeah.
Versus being strategic. Okay. That's cool. Okay. But everything's in flux. So that makes sense. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then I was right around then I attended an analyst briefing on the state of the market. And this analyst went through interviewing executives about, what are your new priorities and all this. And you thought it would be the typical, about reducing cost and revenue and market share. But theirs was, what is our business model? Companies that have been around 20, 30 years, what is our business model now? And then, so that was interesting. But the big part of it is we don't want to, the one that woke me up was we almost unanimously is, I cannot buy for what next year looks like, or even next quarter. I'm buying for the next 30 to 90 days. And so anything that doesn't affect what I do over the next quarter is not of value right now. And that's
like anti-enterprise sales.
Yeah, right.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, and you think about some of the enterprise sales that take 10 to 12 months, and you're now in a totally new world, right? And so what we were doing with digital selling, right? I say what typically takes 5 years to mature happened in 5 months, and that was the way that we're selling and interacting.
I don't get that. Tell me more about that.
So a big part of that is, and this gets into where we're at today, lessons learned, right? Through some of this being opportunistic, and then, hearing what our customers say.
Well, you make it sound like sales cycles have been dramatically compressed for enterprise sales.
They have.
Really?
Yeah. So some of our,
What happened to the silver bullet and relationships and team selling and all of these champions and economic buyers and
It shifted to, I go back to surrounding the account, but now it's surrounding it with multiple team members, right? It's not just my rep with the coach and the champion and me with the executive alignment. It's really surrounding to what I call kind of proof of user, proof of interface, right? We're not doing proof of concept. We're doing proof of usage, and we're doing it such that we have to affect what's going to happen over the next quarter. We're still in that right now, but if I think about our sales motion, I don't go meet one-on-one with customers. I don't get on a plane anymore. And I was traveling weekly, right? But neither is our customer. But what has happened is decisions are by committee. They meet more often, our customers. They talk amongst themselves more. But what has happened on my side and their side, the biggest shift is that we're much more intentional with our time. And we're much wiser with how we spend our time. We used to joke about, like, we're all zoomed out on all the happy hours and all that kind of stuff. Now we actually spend time like this on Zoom doing what matters, and we're much more efficient. Our customer is too. So when I used to tell an executive, let's go have coffee, I'll go see you, it was 3 to 4 weeks out. And then you'd go through this process, and you might do multiple demos and proof of concepts. That is, weeks have compressed into days. We'll have a first meeting, then a day later, we'll have a demo after discovery. Then a day later, they're already talking about get our users involved. Literally a week goes by and we've done what typically takes a month or two. And so that's been compressed, but a little bit is making sure we've adjusted to that, but also
what
our
you're saying
customer.
though is the customer though is because they're on Zoom versus being sort of doing business as what we saw as business as normal. They've eliminated a lot of those sort of administrative meetings that they get so tied up in. Is that what happened? I mean, what compressed
there's
it
no
for them?
more. The good and the bad. The good thing of a culture, if you're in an office, and we had it too.
I guess what I'm saying is, how did they change doing business?
they've
Not how
stopped.
you changed now. You
Yeah.
got me interested in them now as the prospects. This is the
Yeah.
enterprises. How are the enterprises doing business now that's different than the way they used to do
Well, you
business?
just touched on it. Selling isn't about me and my people and how we sell. It's really how the customer wants to buy.
Okay.
And their customers are much more efficient. They're willing to have calls now and talk to us more. So I'm having more engagement, more interactions with executives than I did before. I'm just not doing it in person.
Yeah.
And customers, they don't want to waste time. They're more efficient. Some are doing 15-minute meetings. I, I now have more meetings with, you mentioned about one of the top 5 companies, an executive of one of the top 5 companies. And with him and I have quarterly meetings that now have gone to monthly meetings. And when we were talking right around April, May, I remember him working from home. And this is a pretty well-known executive. His son's in the background while, we're talking, and you can see him on video and all this, and it's distracting. It's kind of like the old days where, sorry, my dog's barking and all that. Now work-life balance has become work-life integration. And now when I talk to him with whoever's in the background, it doesn't matter. It's his family. It's just, we're used to that, and we're engaging more, but a customer is wiser with their time. They're not willing to take more cold calls or cold meetings, but they're willing to take smart meetings, right? So that's why we have to be better about how we engage with discovery and prep work and everything we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so they're more, you're saying they're more careful with their time and how they
They're
use it.
intentional. They have meetings on purpose, with purpose.
What was it like before?
It just took time to go see a
No,
customer.
but from their side, what was it before? They were unintentional with their time?
No, well, just think about it. They're in the office. They're having hallway conversations. They're having more meetings with people that are across the hall, executive meetings. They're probably engaging with, if they're engaging with vendors, it's much more spread out and more vendors. Now it's less vendors, but more quality is what we're seeing as well. Because I asked them about what else they're buying. They're spending a good amount of money, but they're spending on what makes sense for the next quarter or two right now. And now they're planning for next year. We're seeing a shift in that as well.
Oh, you have. So
yeah. So I mean, and that's the thing. It's not about how we're selling. We're adjusting to how they're buying. And so they're all the Zoom meetings and all that. That folks, like I used to say, like, I am zoomed out. I am burnt out. Now it's different. Now when we have meetings, I don't hold the whole hour. Neither the customers. They're having 15 and 25-minute meetings, and we don't have to go the whole time. When you're in an office, you got that 30 minutes with an executive. You spend the 30 minutes and sometimes go over. And so as a vendor, how
do you go back to the silverback? How do you go back to, again, the big critical here is that you and your reps build relationships. Is it not true that relationships take time?
Yeah. Typically
you wanted that 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And how you do that now, though, it has shifted is what we do a good job of now is we don't ask for anything. We give. We do a lot of discovery. We do a lot of research. We look at 10Ks. We look at driving the company, and then we talk the customer's language, and that's enterprise selling. That's why, I mean, every deal is different. One customer's 10K and their goals and statements.
This is a big thing. It used to be, I remember years ago, we used to say that, whenever you make it's a good sales call, if the prospect would have paid you, okay, for the information they received on the call. Yeah. That's what's happening now? You're very much intentional about bringing value to every single call.
Not only that, but our customers are really curious about what other companies are doing, regardless of what industry they're in. So when I'm having conversation about how to use our product and where customers are seeing value, they're much more engaged. And so I have stories, many more stories now, because I'm meeting with more folks over Zoom, executives, and there's some similarities and differences. So when I talk to
you become a connector and a carrier of best practices, in effect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Almost like you really are a consultant at this point.
You're a consultant. You're talking to more customers than some of the analysts are, right? You're having a lot of this, and you see what's trending and what's happening. And by the way, this is changing weekly because some company, like when I talked to Google, and they went from we're not going to open until beginning of the year to the next conversation, we're not going to open until next July, our headquarters. Look how dramatically things have shifted in business that you don't get from some of these quarterly reports. Right. So then, then you have that story, for example, to bring to other customers.
So the same thing that, this was the genesis of this particular Paparelli Zoom chat for entrepreneurs was because entrepreneurs were all asking the same questions, worrying about wondering what other entrepreneurs were doing. So you're saying this is happening at the enterprise level.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest changes. It's happened there. And customers are more open if you're giving value, right? They're more open to sharing before because they want some help. They need help more than they're sitting at home making decisions over Zoom or, if they're using their cell phone, right? A little more than they did in the office, right? And so they feel disconnected and they want to be
You
more.
haven't done, so you're not doing the in face-to-face meetings. You're not doing the dinners that you used to do, right? With some of these executives and things. So do you feel that you have a more distant, that it's more difficult now to build relationships, or it's actually more effective now to build real relationships?
More effective if you use the tools and solutions and you do your homework. It's harder for someone doing cold calling or cold emailing because they're all out there. I see it. I get it all the time. I even had 2 competitors that hit me up on cold calls recently and emails as well. So those that don't do the research are going to die, right? And so that's why you have to be prepared. It's harder. It's harder work. So that, I would say, building a relationship, but the other part of the relationship isn't me, one person with them, one person, or my rep and their coach. It's now by committee. And so when decisions are made for buying things like SalesLoft, it's not done by 1 or 2 people. It's done by a whole committee. The challenging part of that is it almost has to be unanimous instead of like the powers in the users. Like if I go to a CRO or a CEO and we get along great, he's not going to tell his people to go buy SalesLoft. Their people have to want it. The power is with the folks that are going to use us every day, just like any solution. And that's something I've seen shift a lot more. It's not like, hey, Kevin's a great guy, so we should buy this product. That's more building the trust. That's not why they buy. It's because my rep, my SE, my value engineering folks, my consulting, when they're doing statement of works, when they're digging deeper, our partners who implement our product, all aligning. And now the 2 are people have become 7 or 8. And so that's the difficult part, but you're able to connect a lot more dots now because people are much more available.
I love that. So the last question I have for you is, all right, so we went past this 2 month, and then I got to turn this over because I know people have questions for you. But we went through that 2-month period of the lockdown, like nothing's going to change. We're just going to go back to normal, to now this is normal. Do you think that this will change back by when Google goes back in July of 2021? Do you think that the buyers will start, as you said, buying differently again, or will they continue to buy the way that they're buying?
I don't think they'll ever go back to the way they were.
Wow.
Because what's happened is so many solutions and tools that have developed during COVID, and SalesLoft's a big part of that one as well, right? Because we help you sell and you can connect and engage remotely, right? Now, when we think about this, like Comcast Business and all these other ones out there that are used to being in the field every day, have never used a tool other than maybe email or call. They don't do cadences. They don't do anything in an organized fashion that is proven, within their organization, a sales motion. They will start using solutions like ours, and they will be more dependent on reporting, right? And having access to data. It's much more that than going back in the field and having better coffee and lunch meetings. I think they'll just they'll be more effective with the tools that are developed during COVID.
Well, Kyle Porter, Rob Foreman, you heard it straight from your EVP that you are in the right place at the right time. All right. Up his quota, man. You need to do. All right. Hey, listen, Kevin, this has really been great. I just love what you said. A big takeaway I get on this is, look, we have to sell the way the customer buys. I just love that. And the way they're buying is changing. So that means you had to do the adapting, and you have certainly done that, but you are in the right place at the right time, which I think is just fantastic. So it's always good to be on the fast train leading the station. And I'm glad that you're with Kyle and Rob, 2 good friends of mine. But
thank you.
I'll just say that's my insights from the conversation. I know that you guys have insights too. If you do, please send them to me. So I'll publish this on Friday. I'll publish your insights too, and I'll give you credit for them. I give you my normal, to entrepreneurs, I always give you my weekly reminder is cash goes out fast and it comes in slow. Focus on your cash, learn fast, decide fast, and go fast. The next Zoom chat we're going to have, which is going to be the week after Thanksgiving, is I got a really interesting guy on board, and you might be interested in this, Kevin. There's a guy named Kareem Abul-Nega, who is from New York City. Is somebody that I met here in Atlanta years ago who is brilliant. And his market is the New York City public school system. All right. And he's going to come on and talk about how elementary education system, about the elementary education system, where it's headed, and how it is now becoming a business planning constraint, which is going to be interesting. We're putting two worlds together here in a couple of weeks. So please share this weekly Zoom chat with your peers. Let's grow this community. Sign in early. We'll catch up. We did that 15 minutes early. It was a lot of fun. And remember, I'm always praying for you guys each and every day. Thanks for attending. This is the end of the regular session that we have. And now we're moving into the Q&A. Kevin is giving us an extra 15 minutes to ask so you can ask your questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Marshall.
Great. Thank you very much, Charlie. And thank you, Kevin. That was great. Looks like we have a fair number of people who are trying to get their quota of sales in before Thanksgiving, so I had to drop off early. So I will open up. If anyone's got a question for Kevin, please unmute yourself and chime in.
Hey, Kevin, it's Dave Clapp from J&L RPM. How are you?
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
Good. Great talk on sales. Love that. Been in it for 30 years. But so can you expand a little bit on some of the research tools, prep, some of the differences that you've implemented in the pre-COVID versus post-COVID world that you found to be effective?
Yeah, so good question. So outside of the, by the way, what I've learned is that has not changed, that we still have challenges, especially when you've got sellers new to enterprise selling and doing their research. Getting on a call cold and asking the same discovery questions does not work, regardless if it's during a pandemic or not. So just simple Google searches are easy, all the way out to reading investor reports. I had talked to a customer, this happened yesterday too, they're in retail, and they had said, hey, in light of the situation with the pandemic and all this, they're asking us some specific questions because they're hurting. Well, what I did is I went and looked at their 10K, and they've grown 80% year over year in the quarter that just happened because of COVID. So I thought that was odd and a little different than what I was expecting from that customer. So, but just reading that information and seeing how they're doing. But so some of the tools in addition to that, other than using Sales Law for doing cadences, right? Because what cadences do, and I'm not trying to make this an infomercial, but allowing your inside sellers, and now your field sellers are also inside sellers, to use solutions that are proven to run through A/B testing. And how many times should I call somebody, email them, in what order? When do I send them content? Do I ask for a meeting, or do I ask for a demo, or do I just send them some information? When's the right time? Is it Wednesday? What's the title that should be in the email? All these things SalesLoft does. In addition to that, using things like conversation intelligence tools, there's a lot out there like ourselves and others that will join Zoom videos and other videos and record the session and then transcribe that back and be able to, tag certain words. So if this was a customer meeting right now and SalesLoft, our CI bot, had joined, it would transcribe it, and I can go search back every time that next steps or proposal or pricing was said. And then I can go back and review the whole conversation and then share that with my team. So we can say, hey, can you see where ABC company said this, this, and this? So now we have real-time transcribing and video and audio of what has gone on. So we can share that information almost like we were on the call, right? And that's a big part of it. And then, we didn't really get into it, but like forecasting has changed too, right? Because our enterprise sales process for six-figure deals have gone from over 10 and a half months down to 4.5 months. So in half, because so our forecasting has changed, and our model of coverage, how much pipeline we need to close the business we project, has also changed. So we've gotten smarter about that. So using good forecasting solutions, and the way that you expected your forecast to be last year is different now because of what's going on with the sales motion and cycle. So there's, I would say there's a lot more modern tools that do, again, in summary, forecasting, conversation intelligence, and then, how to do calls, emails. Video is a big part. Companies like, we partner with them like Vidyard. It's actually crazy how folks can get my attention by doing Vidyards, and they send it in an email and I look at that and all of a sudden they've got a whiteboard that says Kevin on it. I want to talk to you. And then they've done research on me and they know me. And I'm like, I want to talk to that guy. He knows what my pain is. And by the way, that was very personal. So those little kind of things that are tactical have made a big difference.
Wow.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
That's great. All right. Thank you very much for that question, David. Anyone else? Quick question
I've got one
for,
if I could jump in.
yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, so how are you, we always talk, one of the things that I know about Salesforce is you're always training your sales force, right? You're always giving them new information, new guidance, what kind of instructions or what are you given to your sales force to keep them relevant in this environment and going forward?
So yeah, we do training often as well too. One of the things we've discussed a lot about is throw out a lot of what you know in the past and let's relearn what the customer's doing. It's the conversation we had before. But the biggest thing, it still keeps going back to what I keep saying, is discovery, new discovery, not with the reports or what even business model you knew they were following before, but what they're doing now. You look at companies like Wayfair that is skyrocketing. They're doing so well. And you think because of the space they're in, they'd be tough. It's because people are remodeling, they're buying new homes. So look at the new trends. Real estate in certain areas is taking off as well too, residential real estate. So, I mean, you think about that. You think about financial services, how dramatically that's changed right now and the way that people are looking at retirement and all those things. So discovery, knowing like what our customers are doing with their own customers is the big thing. So I would say like, let's just get into the discovery, pain, gain. If the pain and gain we list, especially when I do deal reviews with reps, if they talk about feature or function or seats or pricing, then I know we've not done a good job. There's more behind that. It's not why people buy because a tool is cool, right? There's some other reason they're driving at, and you can take, if you ask enough questions, you can discover that.
That's great. All right. Thank you. Any other questions for Kevin, please? All right, we got a lot of positive feedback. The chat thread here has lots of positive things. And Charlie, I think we've answered all our questions.
All right. Well, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you spending your time with us. This has been very valuable for a lot of entrepreneurs. You've made a difference in people's lives. And I would say that John Imlay would certainly call you a tiger, and I do wish you the best of success and that you hit your numbers through the end of the year. And that you start the new year on a fast track. You've been fantastic. And thank you all for coming today. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.